hash and circle up.
Welcome to On, the Hash House Harrier podcast for interviews, history, and stories. I'm your host, Ra.
Today on the podcast, we're back in the UK in Milton, Keynes with a longtime hasher, now in decade 5 of hashing from many continents. Welcome today on the podcast, the unforgettable Condom Man. Welcome.
Hey, thanks, dumb fuck. I'm not going to call you Ra. I'm going to call you dumb fuck because that's your name, buddy.
Okay, there you go. Let's introduce people with your hashing origin story. When, where, and how did you get to your first hash?
Okay, it was 1987. It was the Friday before Christmas in Mogadishu. We didn't have any hash names. It was this guy called Patrick Hamner, and we met him at a party on Thursday night. And the Mogadishu hash was small but well-formed. There was like 15, 20 people. Wasn't a lot to do in Mogadishu at that time. It's before the shit hit the fan, but not that long before the shit hit the fan. Quite a small expat community. And Patrick Hamner said, "What are you guys doing? When are you coming to the hash?" And I heard about the hash, and he said, "There'll be beer." So it was like, okay, right. So we came to the hash, and we joined the Mog hash, and within about 2 months I was hash music. For every single down, hash music had to come up with a 2-line song on the spot there. So it would be, "Dumb fuck, you got your car stuck in the sand on the way to the hash." Okay, can we have a note for dumb fuck to be, "Here's the dumb fuck, he's not so grand, he got his fucking wheels in the sand," or something like that. And he's a hash.
Wow.
He's true. We had to do one of those every time. So I found my niche of it there. Mog hash, good fun. We used to run on the beach quite a lot in the dunes and that. So that kind of got me the hashing bug a little bit. Was there for 18 months and then popped up again in Cairo in 1991, where we first met on Cairo hash, and again got dragged along by Erect Runner, Tony Treen I was working with, and we found the hash our first Friday, and the rest is kind of history.
Let's back up on history then. Most people have not hashed in Somalia. I don't even know if Somalia exists anymore, or how long Mogadishu hash survived. What was life like in Mogadishu? You were able to get beer, hash t-shirts. What was life like there?
Yeah, so it was quite interesting. Beer was a bit of a premium. We could get lots of spirits because they were easily transported, but there was no local breweries of beer. So all the beer used to get brought in by container, either individuals' containers like embassies or whatever. So of course the Marines were our best buddies, type of thing, because we could access all sorts of stuff. Or there was it was called the duty-free shop, and you had and when you knew stuff had coming in, you went along, you had to get your passport. So actually there was no hash sub. So to join the hash, you put a slab of beer in the thing, and then every couple of months you put another slab in. It was very much a kind of a voluntary sort of thing. And then if you didn't have any beer, then you helped yourself. And there was very much that sort of spirit that was going on. Hash t-shirts, if somebody went to Nairobi, they'd maybe bring up some stuff. We got some pretty shitty ones printed. I don't have any hash paraphernalia from Mogadishu. I had one hash t-shirt. I think I did my 25th run or something like that. I've got a Mogadishu Motorcycle Club t-shirt though, because the hash and the MC Mogadishu thrash and burn, there was a lot of overlap there. It was a real spirit of the hash type of, you mucked in, you set your trails if you could. Other people did, or you got your gardener to set your trail for. I don't know, thing.
There's one story to tell from Mogadishu. It's not really related to the hash, but it's my favorite story that I tell people. You have a story about somebody who was involved in a car wreck and what his defense was at court.
Oh God, yes. So it was a defense in court. It wasn't used, but a reasonable justification for having a car wreck, extenuating circumstances, was you'd been drinking. And it was like, yeah, but you've been drinking. They still chop the book at you, and you still had to pay bloody whatever. But the fact that you've been drinking was the equivalent of, oh, I was blinded by a car coming in the other direction, or a tree fell on the road, or something like that. But there was almost like a de facto curfew in Mogadishu because things were getting quite dodgy towards the end. So actually, if you went out and you were coming back much after kind of 8, 9 o'clock in the evening, the streets were pretty quiet. And there was a pretty heavy sort of policey sort of presence. If you were obviously a foreigner, you were waved through. They were looking to shake down others. Yeah, but we used to, in Mog at the time, we were up country. We were on a taxi fly flying spraying operation. So the boys would come back into town and we had 48 hours to raise hell every couple of weekends sort of thing. So we did our best. And then we had to go back up to a relatively sober flying camp where we were in the bush doing that sort of thing. Fun times.
Once you got to Cairo, you got involved, I think maybe first as hash horn, long time as hair raiser. What do you remember about your earliest days Cairo hash?
Cairo hash was great. One of my first runs was, I think it was the 450. We've got the t-shirt of people building pyramids. I remember Ismailia run. We used to go off and get pissed and that sort of thing. I remember some of the characters. You were there. I remember we used to have Mohsen, Hot Air. We didn't have hash names in those early days. They just came in. Characters like, oh God, Steve, Molotov, the Head Can Crusher. He needed his diplomatic immunity on a regular basis. Emad, I'm not sure whether Emad got a hashtag.
It became Deep Throat.
Deep Throat, yeah. He used to give me a ride on quite a regular basis. The hash going out Wadi Diggler, and then quite a lot of time with the rugby club as well. But it was a big hash, good big family hash. I think some of those kids learned some new words. I remember there was some spells when you were not in Cairo, and I used to take over as RA, and the RA was like that dress-up thing. I had this big cotton wool beard that like used to flap around in the air, and then Sloppy Seconds used to deputize as well as RA. He had one of these. I remember he got himself an outfit
Yeah,
like
that's
that.
right.
This is from my Cairo days, and yeah, I mean, I'm not a kind of compulsory on, but each week going to a restaurant afterwards. Andreas was a great one where they used to. It was like it was a chicken restaurant, and the option was yes or no. It wasn't. And they used to leave your beer bottles on the table. They didn't take your empty beer bottles, and at the end you paid for your chicken, and then they'd allocate the beer bottles. Okay, those are mine. That's not mine. That's his over there, type of thing. And going up to Alexandria to take the piss out the Delta hash, there was a memorable Nash hash where the morning after the hangover run was set in ice cubes. I remember one time around the streets of Alexandria, the Bloody Mary check. That shows how close the hair was. I think she'd set off about 30 seconds before the rest of the pack live hairing it.
You remember your hash naming?
I do remember, because it was when we were first getting hash names, and it wasn't a regular thing. It was actually this mad woman called Nancy. Remember, she had two dogs, Kaiba and
Hi, Bob.
yeah.
It was Nancy Kelly, an American school teacher at CAC.
Yeah. I showed people this trick that I thought everybody knew about, how to blow a condom up over their head, but it turns out nobody knew. And I had to take the earring of, there was a woman whose hash name was Safe Ears, because she used to make condoms, and she used to put these gel glitter pens on them and then turn them into earrings. And I said, oh, you can blow them up. No, you can't. So basically I had to agree to, if I couldn't do it, I had to pay for the pair of earrings, because she used to sell it. So that's right. Blew this thing up over my head, and then it was Nancy. Your hash name, Condom Man. It wasn't like an official naming. It was, everyone was like picking up hash names. It was like, okay, that's it. So that's it, and it's stuck along the way.
You were a hair raiser. How hard, easy, what was the size of the hash, and how hard was it? What was recruiting hairs like in Cairo as hair raiser?
It wasn't bad, but as a hair raiser, you never go trying to find someone for next week or the week after, because people have plans. Have a long hairline, go for 6 months. And if I come to you and said, hey, dumb fuck, do you want to set the trail on the 23rd of February? You won't have anything else in your diary. So you'll say, yeah, I'll do it. Why not? Unless you're on leave or know what's going to be happening. Then I keep reminding you every week. Then you put the hairline. That was the way to do it. It's before anyone used spreadsheets, particularly. No, we maybe just about use spreadsheets. There was no email. There was no WhatsApp. So you were always reliant on handing out a run sheet. I remember Batty Boy used to, not Batty Boy, Deli Boy, Simon used to type up a word, a hash trash every week, and then we'd always make sure that the hairline was at the bottom, and then you start reminding people about 4 weeks out, okay, remember you're doing it, where's it going to be, and then you can put it on it. And then there was always a map for the next week. But okay, it was Wadi Diggler, unless it was
What about the beer in Cairo?
Oh fuck, the beer of choice for those with none, Stella. Oh, I remember Bert. Yeah, we actually stole those spoof adverts from the Delta Hash, and I did a Hash magazine. I don't know if you remember. I did the
Yeah,
yearbook.
I've got it.
And then I stole some of those that the Delta Hash had done, I think, for Nash Hash, or they had a run of 300th run or something like that. It's just pure plagiarism. Anyone that does anything originally, don't waste your time. And then Bert would pick those up and whatever. But yeah, it was like there were two types of beer. There was Stella and Stella Export. And as the advert said, Stella Export, who the fuck would want to import it? Only Speedy Sharifa, because it's got more alcohol in it and he likes to have one for breakfast every morning type of thing. That was all right. I mean, it was like, you get the odd floater, but it was cold and it was like, there was no choice. It was like the chicken at Andreas. It was like the choice was yes or no. It wasn't, oh yeah, I think I'll have one of these or one of those sort of thing. And if it was bad, you had to have another one in order to make sure you had a good one. And if it was good, then you had to have another one because you obviously had a good back. So you wanted to, it was crap. During Ramadan, the brewery stopped producing and they had all this old stock which had been sitting in warehouses, and you got stuff that tastes of cockroach piss, but not that I've ever tasted cockroach piss. Yeah, but it was good. It was original stuff. It was before people got too spoilt. It was you work hard, play hard, make the most of what the hands that are dealt you. You didn't sit inside watching Netflix or whatever. You went out and found people, like-minded people, half-minded people, and you had fun with them. You had a party at somebody's house, or you went off to a restaurant or whatever. I had an apartment. I don't think I bloody cooked in it for about a year and a half. I mean, why? Unless I had a bunch of people around, in which case I was cooking it. I just filled the fridge up with beers type of thing.
In the early 1990s, we started having a Nash hash. It's one of the earliest Nash hashes, apart from Asia. I think we had an Egyptian Nash hash every year.
Yeah.
And then, what about your hash travels? A part where we could drive to that. When did you first get on a plane and go on a hash somewhere else? You remember?
Ooh, fuck. So I left Egypt in 1994, and I hashed a bit in the UK, and then I went to Cyprus into hash that Urine organized. Was it Nicosia? Anyhow,
I was in the middle.
Yeah, that one.
Limassol, right.
Yeah, so it was a Limassol into hash. My first into hash. Had a whale of a time, really good fun. Met up with all the Cairo guys there because I knew all of those sort of people, and met Clugs for the first time. He came into Cairo just after I left. I remember having a breakfast beer with him at about 8 o'clock in the morning on the beach in Limassol. Partied it quite hard. That was fun, and I got bitten by the into hash kind of bug a little bit. Then I think the year after went to Eurohash in Brussels. So that would have been 97 in Brussels. Then 98 KL Mother Hash. I remember saying I got drunk in the Long Bar in the Royal Salanga Club, and you said I vomited in the toilets of the Long Bar of the Royal Salanga Club. And that was such good value because my work paid my ticket there, and I did some work around that. And it was just after the Asian currency crash. So I remember we stayed at the Mandarin Oriental, and it cost like $30 a night and it was, we were ordering like room service for like $1. It was just unreasonably cheap. You just felt so guilty, which meant that the money we started off staying in like a cheap hotel. We said, fuck it, let's just stay in the most expensive hotel, and it was still $30 a night or whatever. And that was really good fun, really good value.
Who were some of the people? I know you had some friends there that aren't with us anymore. Some of the older hashers from 25, 30 years ago that were there. Jumper's dad.
God, yes, he was there. I remember him more from the one in Tasmania, actually.
Really? Okay.
I remember doing some.
You and we ran a circle in KL. I remember at the Interhash on our run, there was nobody in charge.
Yeah. God, I remember that, and it was because they were big circles. They were like 100 people type of thing, maybe more. And what they did is, and they got people. This guy was so okay. Everyone who's got a camera come into the circle, and it was like lame. I think I've pushed you into the fucking circle and said, just sort it out type of thing. And we ended up with butt chugs, and the thing just flipped. Oh, talking of good circles, the highlight I remember from Cyprus was Noriega doing his Me No Likey Blitty Sailor act. He did the whole big reveal at the end with his wedding tackle tucked up behind too. That is such a memorable circle that I had. Yeah, but yeah, KL was quite just how you could take a circle and turn it, and everyone was, oh, did you go on that? Oh, that was a really good. That was a really good. There was a bunch over the circle. Sort of thing, yeah.
In Tasmania, Hobart Interhash 2000, we got on stage. Was that your first hash act? Do you remember organizing that?
Oh no, but so I remember that. We got on stage. You had come to UK Nash Hash. You'd come to visit in the UK, and we'd gone to UK Nash Hash in Glasgow, and we beat the Edinburgh Festival the week before that, and we'd remember the hypno dog hypnotized, and you pretended to be hypnotized on stage. And then the thing we went to see the next evening was Boom Chicago, which was like an improv thing, and I got dragged up on stage, and I went doing that. So we come away from the Edinburgh Festival straight to Nash Hash, and I think I'm not sure whether we did in the act at Nash Hash. I think we might have, and it was the Mad Monks playing musical chairs sort of thing. We did that, and we needed a third person and we got Teas Made.
No, it was Red Lobster.
Red Lobster, Christ, yes. Another Cairo. God, I remember him swimming in the Nile to catch up with the felucca and puking his guts up because had he seen that he's been swallowing curds. Red Lobster, God. Rob Lister, Red Lobster. Forgotten all about it.
Do you remember who organized the music? So this was, I think, Table Wine remembers that act from Nash Hash, but we did it in Tasmania. Do you remember who ran the music?
And we needed somebody else to join us, so we got Teas Made, who was pissed out of her head. So I knew Teas Made from kind of Cardiff Mountain Sheep, UK. She's now running ferries, looking at Facebook, running ferries in New Zealand. She's doing that, and yeah, and I remember doing that, and we were about to get gonged off, and who ran the music?
Urine.
Was it Urine ran the music on it? Okay. Yeah. That was because it was such a good, simple, we didn't need to remember any words or whatever. All we needed to do, I think I went out and bought a CD I've still got it somewhere, of Gregorian chant music. This is before you could download all of this from Spotify or whatever. And we took the Gregorian chant music out and did that. And people were like, what the hell's going on? And then we were just about to get, and then yeah. I remember Teas Made being so fucking pissed on the stage, because of course this was at the end of the first day of runs and whatever, and everyone was like, and then yeah, God, yeah. I think that's the only time I've been, I don't know, I can't remember. The trouble is, when you try hash memories, they all involve a lot of beer, and therefore memories become faded in time. So did that one, and then we got recruited at that to go to the Africa Interhash Victoria Falls 1999, the next year. Of course you remember that, and that was a memorable one because we picked up Burning for Your Log and the after named Hyena Butt to go to that. We hashed in London the night before. You came up from Cairo, and we hashed in London, and I met, look if you like, my wife.
Yeah, we call that on the hash people who met their significant other partner on the hash.
Yeah,
we call them bottom feeders.
Bottom feeders.
So, do you remember the event in London where we met?
I know it was a Tuesday evening. We were staying over because we were flying out the Wednesday evening to Lusaka because we'd organized this safari ahead of time. And it was the city. We looked up to see who ran on a Tuesday night in London. It was City Hash formal dress run. So we went along, and we had those pith helmets that I got done. And I can't remember what the shirts, we didn't have any others. We wore the pith helmets, and they were all wearing kind of formal dress. And you ended up swapping all of your clothes for a young lady's little black dress and traveled home on the tube, home back to wherever we were staying, West London, Paddington, Bayswater, I can't remember where it was. And that's when Look If You Like was Hash Cash. And the rest is history, sort of thing. Because you were best man at our wedding a couple of years later.
Yeah, the thing that I won't forget about that weekend was standing on the tube in the little black dress, about 15 feet away from you and Look If You Like, getting to know each other a little bit more intimately in public.
And you were embarrassed by us. You were wearing a black dress and nothing else, and we were embarrassing you, and you were hiding behind us.
I just felt like I was at risk of someone coming picking on me, and you weren't going to have my back because you were distracted. But it all ended up very very good. But some of your background, where were you born?
I was born in Zambia. I'm an African. Grew up in Scotland. Yeah, and traveled around the world. Traveled Somalia, Egypt, Mali, and then more recently Zambia, Tanzania. Having got to the stage, I went back over to Africa and picked up my hashing career, bigger time in Zambia and Tanzania most recently.
Let's just talk quickly about Zambia, because on that prelude to Pan Africa 1999, we got the hash in Zambia with some mates of yours that aren't with us anymore.
Yeah, Mansell and Wino. I remember we drunk with them somewhere, and they said, come and visit us when you're through. So we took them up on it. Stalwarts, absolute stalwarts. Tony Harrison and Pam Harrison, both late now. And got to know them quite a lot better when I was back actually living in Lusaka. So met up with them. We did that safari, and then we headed down to, I don't think we actually hashed with Lusaka then. We just stayed with them at their place. And then we headed down via Harare to Vic Falls, and then met up with, there was all the Lusaka crew there, and there was a Cairo crew. That was such a fantastic. Remember, we went out on a train into the bush, and there was a wounded buffalo and a professional hunter out trying to find this wounded buffalo. And then we all got very pissed, and we came back. We're singing on the train. We're singing in the train.
Yeah, that was an amazing event. Of course, Pan Africa was started by Garfield and Sister Michael. The setting. What do you remember about the setting for that?
So there was a hotel, which is, I can't remember, it was a Kingdom or something like that. And it wasn't open, but it was almost open, but it wasn't finished off. So they did a deal, we could stay there. So it was like the host, and we took over this entire luxury hotel. It was a bit kitsch luxury. It was a little bit Disneyland-y type of thing, but a really great location. And we got rooms if we wanted for what would now be the equivalent of about $50-$60 a night, or maybe $100, but good value rooms. I remember this hotel, they had just buckets of cold beer strategically placed at intervals. So if you ever needed a cold Zambezi beer, then you could just grab one of those. Again, good acts, good runs. On the Sunday morning hangover run, there was the only hash I've ever run where we had to divert the trail because a herd of elephants got in the way, and they decided that we shouldn't. And this was right in Victoria Falls in the town. But just really nice bunch of people, and it was just a really solid event. One of my best hash t-shirts I've still got, with the lion claws coming over the shoulder. And I remember this guy, God, what are the circles, was proudly telling us that he'd come third in the big dick competition or something like that. And someone said, A, he told us he entered, and B, he told us he only came third.
I didn't win.
Yeah. Yeah.
Before we talk about your return to the southern part of Africa, let's talk about the International Rehydration hash, which has been spawned off to another location, the Emirates. But what do you remember about the founding of the International Hydration hash, and what was the idea there?
So it would have been Cairo in about 92. It was Tony Treen, erect runner, who was my colleague and friend in Cairo. I think he might even still be there. He went bush a bit, I think. And he'd done this thing in Dhaka in Bangladesh, which I've run a few times with the night runners of Bengal, and I used to go through there. Great bunch of people. A lot of the social life in Dhaka for expats is based around the different clubs. So you had the American club, the British club, the Scandal Hooligan club, whatever. So they used to have this run that went around each club, and you had the national drink in each club, and then they ran around the streets of Gulshan, which is the ghetto where the expats live. So we wanted to recreate this in Cairo in the desert. So we got 5, 6 different nationalities, and I said, "Oh, I'll do whiskey," and someone else said, "I'll do this, I'll do that." We had 5 or 6 different nationalities. Everyone just brought a bottle, their own bottle, and I remember Erect Runner's brother-in-law had a flag making business in Switzerland, Switzerland. Anyhow, so he got a bunch of national flags, and I remember running around Cairo looking for bamboo poles, and I had to buy these big long feather dusters, like these 2-meter long things, chop the feathers off, and we made these flags and we put them around the desert. And at the end of that, we just had 50 people absolutely mullered. They were just steaming out in the desert. And then we said that worked quite well. It got a little bit leery because I think patriotism turned into nationalism a little bit at one stage. But we all, and I managed to get some glasses done, etched. Higgs and Hill sponsored it. So what you did is you paid, you got your glass, and then you got it filled up at each thing. And then that kind of, we turned it into a bigger thing than it. Everyone agreed it was a astounding success, mainly because we couldn't remember anything going too badly wrong. And then the next year it was much bigger. We got some better mugs done. We got some nice ceramic sort of mugs done in the mud factory. We got a bit more organized. And then like we had 20 people or something showed up. And then again, we were steaming out in the desert. And then we ran out of beer because we'd run out of all of the schnapps and the Long Island iced tea and schnapps. And we had the Finnish people at the finish with the vodka, and we had whiskey and gin and tonics, and we had the Saudi Arabian check, which was water. I remember that because we thought people needed rehydrating halfway through. And then we ran out of beer, and everyone was like, "Oh, go home." And then as we're going home, remember Ibrahim Cubes? He'd driven into a ditch because he was so pissed. And we stopped to pull him out. We said, "Have you got a tow rope in your boot?" And he had the old Russian Carladas or whatever, those kind of square things. And we opened up the boot, and he had cases and cases of bloody beer in there, and he was driving. So we said, "Screw you, Ibrahim Q." So instead of pulling him out the ditch, we just helped ourselves to some of his beers. There's some great photos kicking around of that. And then it just took a life of its own. It became an institution so quickly to have the International Rehydration Run. And I don't think there was any t-shirts. It was always in glass, which was a mug or a glass or whatever.
I think I might have one t-shirt. I think there was at least one, about the 9th one. And we ended up often sleeping overnight because of the heavy drinking. We'd camp in the desert. Occasionally someone would disappear. I don't know if you know the story of one of the Irish nurses that was upset. She thought somebody had stolen her wallet, so she marched out to the highway and hitchhiked home. A truck driver picked her up, grabbed her tit. She slapped him, got angry, got out and flagged down a police car and yelled at them and made her take him home. We didn't know any of this happened, so we put on a search for about 2 hours thinking she fell off a cliff, and we never found her.
I don't remember. I know that was after my time. I wouldn't have allowed that sort of thing to happen on my watch. It was a nice orderly rehydration run. But I do remember. I remember the Van Lips getting fairly lit up, and Steve, obviously Molotov. It was me, Erect Runner, and Molotov with the 3 original hairs on that. And there was one, I think it was the second one. He was duty officer at British Embassy, so he had the radio, because again there was no cell phones or whatever. So he had the official radio. God help me, help anyone, any British citizen that got picked up by the police or got killed in a road accident or whatever, because the responsible person for the British Embassy, and you didn't hear the words responsible and Molotov used in the same sentence very often, I can assure you of that, was steaming in the desert. And I think once an hour on the hour he had to check back into security or whatever to check that everything was okay. God, yes. Yeah, but it was nice to start an institution and just let it go. When I heard, I said, I think it's still going. So I think they deserve me a free registration if I go back to Cairo at all.
Once you partnered up with Look If You Like, where did you go back to first live in Africa?
Yeah, partnered up with Look If You Like, carried on hashing UK, organised UK Nash Hash with the Milton Keynes boys and girls, who at that time had the reputation of being a fairly wild they always organised the naked run, the midnight naked run at any event. So that was Milton Keynes. I don't know if you remember in Cardiff, there was the midnight naked run up and down the Millennium Stadium and whatever. They used to play the Benny Hill tune. And then after our daughter came along, Beer Chick, as she got named, we moved to Zambia. We were going to go to Africa for a couple of years. Opportunity, youngish kid, career break for look, if you like, whatever. So went to Africa for 2 years and came back 15 years later. So I got to Lusaka, Zambia. I'd already been hashing on and off. The company I went out there with were all big into hashing. It was almost like if you were MD of the company in Zambia, you were obliged to sponsor a T-shirt or do this or become GM or HM as we used to call it, Lusaka Hash. So did everything on Lusaka Hash, from beer to HM to RA to hair razor to hash music to the lot, ups and downs. Had some really good value people there. Silver Bullet, who was a stalwart from the Maputo hash, so it was a nice mix in Lusaka. Had to a constant battle to stop the prostitutes taking over, but that was keep it a bit more family orientated type of thing. Nice running country.
Were there hashers coming through on vacation or work? Did you have many visitors in Lusaka then?
Yeah, we did. I remember there was one guy who arrived in Lusaka. He was a visitor, but he just wanted to hear it come out. So he then went back to his hotel, where he got taken upstairs by a young lady from the bar and woke up in the morning with his entire room, all of his luggage, his laptop, his cell phone, everything completely. So he got a hash named Cleaned Out or Room Service or something like that. I'm just trying to think of other visitors that came through. We used to have folk would come up from South Africa. I remember Tinkerbell, who was quite a stalwart of the Cape Town hash, used to come through from time to time. We had the British High Commissioner used to run with us a bit. We used to have the Finnish High Commissioner, a Finnish ambassador. He arrived just after the president died, so he couldn't get his credentials recognized. So he had no official status, diplomatic status, but he wasn't the ambassador. So he had a lot of time on his hands. So then he joined the hash, loved the hash, and used to set the trail on a regular basis. Really good, no airs and graces about him. So he was named illegal immigrant on the hash there. And he used to invite all the hash to Finnish National Day, where there was like serious, the Finns can drink for Europe or whatever. So I remember he was good value on that. We used to have the annual Zimzam hash, but it died away, and we discovered that the Zims had been doing it every year, but forgetting to invite us, which may have said something about them or something about us.
What was the public take on hashing there? Were you underground? Did the people know about you?
No, so we almost always used to hash out of town. So we had some with it very close to Lusaka. There's forest reserves, there's farms and whatever. So it would always be out of town. And people who didn't know us would go, "Oh, what are those people doing?" The hash had a little slightly bad boy image. It was the sort of thing that nice women didn't let their husbands go to because they thought they'd be picked up by a young Zambian girl. So we had to keep battling that. But actually, it wasn't that. But it had a bit of a sort of a bad boy reputation, or bad, which we didn't mind that much. But nice mix of local Zambians and longer term expats and people passing through to keep it fresh type of thing.
You talked about Delhi Boy writing the hash trash in Cairo, and then by the time you got back to Zambia, internet was coming. Did you see hash trashes again?
Yeah, so we had them in Zambia, but were they handed out? Used to continue. Yeah, they were handed out in Lusaka. Getting to Dar, they were circulated by email, and then they fell away because it was a pain in the ass. It was like finding someone to do them. And I think there was a bit of a novelty, like in Cairo days or whatever, the fact that somebody handed you out your own little newspaper once a week, and while you're waiting for the hash to begin, like in Lusaka as well, you'd read about last week's run, and it was a way of making people think that they missed out if they hadn't attended, because it never said it was a shit run. It was always described as being really good. So actually last week's Hash Trash was quite a good recruiting sort of thing. But the idea that, oh, look, you got a bit of paper, and but now anyone can produce, and so it lost a bit by being just emailed out. But it missed a bit actually. But I think a lot of these sort of what happens on WhatsApp groups and Facebook groups, if people are still doing hash stuff on Facebook, substitutes a little bit for the banter in the description. And people, if you think about it, everyone's posting photos on your hash WhatsApp group about what happened, and there's a bit of crack and a bit of banter, and people say, good run this week, well done, fuckface being named. That's replaced the Hash Trash. So it's a crowdsourced real-time Hash Trash. There you go.
How was your transition to Dar es Salaam, both as a job, and what did you find the situation of the hash when you landed there?
Yeah, we left Zambia and then went back again quite quickly. So I had 2 leaving dues from Lusaka, which was quite fun, which was a good chance to unplug from the committee and not go back into any serious role apart from like songmaster, which they'd not given to anyone else. In fact, I was songmaster of 3 hashes. I'm still songmaster of Milton Keynes hash. I was away for 15 years and they didn't give the job to anybody else. So yeah, quite different actually. Dar es Salaam hash was quite a different sort of hash. It was quite a lot more expat-y. It was a lot more mainstream. People were members of the Caledonian Society and the Yacht Club and the hash. There was a lot of kind of overlap, and we weren't the bad boys. Disappointing in some ways. Good singing, good circles, always having a meal afterwards. So your run fee, and if you were the hair, you either did it from a restaurant or you cooked up at home or whatever. So hash was much more mainstream social, more away weekends. There was a lot more sort of events that kind of happened. There was a annual Bagamoyo relay, and there was the camp outs and some of those sort of things.
When did you get into mismanagement leading there?
Within about 6 months of arriving, because I was seen as someone that was prepared to do it and knew what I was talking about. So there's a guy, Lusaka Cockroach, he'd been in Dar, then Lusaka, then back to Dar. So he was a bit of an entry point in there. Very sad, actually. He got cerebral malaria a couple of years ago, and we had a fundraiser, had to raise a lot of money to medevac him out. Hashes around the world put their hand in their pockets and pitched in $5, $20, $50, $100. It was people that didn't know him. Really nice hash community story. But he's a cut him anywhere and you'll find a hasher in there, Cockroach sort of thing. So he like dragged me in and got in. I was GM pretty quickly, and I was RA and stand-in RA, and I think I did the beer. Yes, I did, because I had a shed. And we used to get we used to get really good sponsorship, and we used to get good sponsorship deals, but we'd have to buy 100 cases of beer at a time, and they had to be stored somewhere. So they were stored in my shed, and then people would come and pick them up from the shed, and my gardener would like the store one, and he'd get them to sign out so many cases of beer, and the ice would be delivered. Yeah, so got stuck in fairly quickly. As I said, it was a kind of a slightly tighter group, much easier to do. It was on a Monday evening, traditional hash evening, straight after work, back home and out to the hash, and then Tuesday morning hangovers type of thing. But very hot and sweaty. You needed a lot of cold beer. We used to have a beer check every hash. There was one guy who didn't run latecomer, and he still does it halfway around the trail. It was like that for the beer check. Big cold box, cooler box, ice esky full of cold beers always, which was way to do it.
When did you leave there?
COVID came along, where we were thinking about drifting back to the UK. COVID came along, had to make some pretty rapid decisions about, look, if you like, Beer Chick. Beer Chick was then just about to turn 13. So we were thinking about schooling back in the UK and that anyhow. So they were on, I think it was the last Qatar Air flight out of Dar before the airport shut and that sort of thing. So then I did a bit of the thick end of 2 years, based there, hopping backwards and forwards, coming back, working from the UK for a month, then back to Dar. And so Tanzania never officially had any COVID, because the president said that there was no COVID in Tanzania because everyone prayed hard enough to keep it away. Or although people might be dying of respiratory diseases, there was going to be no lockdown, there was going to be no mask wearing, right up to when he died of COVID, actually, which was, and then his successor came in and was a lot more sensible about stuff. But there were waves of that sort of coming through. So we had to be a little bit careful. But So the hash use shut down a little bit, or we just reduced a little bit as well, because people singing in each other's faces, swapping beer mugs, all in a tight circle probably wasn't the best, even though we're outdoors. But yeah, so then came back to the UK June last year, having made a great disgraceful exit from Tanzania.
It's more than 30 years in the developing world, with just a couple of years back in the UK.
Yeah.
Apart from the internet coming and pre-COVID, is the hash the same as it was?
I see hash might have peaked, actually, in terms of, I see the demographic getting older. So it's like our sort of demographic, we were the wild things at the age of 30, 40, getting it out of our system, whatever. I'm not seeing so many younger people coming in, but it's a bit difficult because UK hashes are quite different from international hashes. International hashes still keep that. What do you do? Oh, you go to the hash. Oh, you meet people, you drink stuff, you do this. So there's quite a churn going through that. They've suffered a little bit because there's a lot more to do with your time, a lot more places where you can sit and watch Netflix, or you can do this or that type of thing. Whereas in kind of the old traditional hashy, there was fuck all to do, so you went hashing type of thing, or at least you gave it a try. So I think the demographics got older. I'm not sure. I don't think we're probably ever going to get back to those large numbers, like 5,500 people going to Interhash anymore. I could be wrong. I'm not sure how many were at UK Nash Hash. I think Nash Hash peaked at about 800-900 people. I'm not sure where that's going to get back there. It's a pity. I think that we might have peaked in terms of the glory days, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't have a role to play. But I don't know how it is in other places. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Pan Asia is looking to become a big event and maybe take the mantle as the biggest hash event, because that's still very popular. I don't know if you're informed, the American Interhash had a crash and burn, and yeah, there's a lot of differences now, and there's so many more options. Do you remember how you found hashes when you were traveling?
You had
In the
Jim
early-
Magic Hughes' little book. I've still got a copy of it. It was like that sort of size, and it was out of date before it went to press. And that was the Bible. And you went and so like, where's the hash? And then there were no cell phones, so you had to phone someone's work number. And then it didn't have his name, so you say, "Could I speak to Cat Bollock or whatever it is?" And they say, "Who? What?" And you didn't even know their real name. There used to be a guy in the UK, a hasher called Dog Bolter, and he told his people at work, if anyone calls for Doug Bolter, direct them to me because I'll take his calls type of thing. Because so it is easier. People aren't even really using Facebook pages anymore. WhatsApp's taken over a little bit more in what's happening, but it's a little bit less inclusive, because if you had a web page, anyone can go there, find where you are. WhatsApp means you're a much more kind of, if you're in the group, you're in the group, but finding out what's happening, which is a bit of a pity in many ways. But yeah, there's other things to do, not as fun, but more interesting things to do, a wider option. And a lot of it is people stumble on the hash, and normally within the first week or two, if their hash is for life, or they think that it's the most disgusting, awful, ridiculous, fucking puerile thing they've ever done, in which case they disappear. I think fewer people are trying hashing for the first time now, and therefore there's fewer people sticking into the system. Wherever I go, I will, not for the running, but if I was going to be going to live somewhere, I would look up the local hash in the UK or abroad or whatever. It was absolutely a social anchor for me when I arrived in Lusaka and then Dar, and you get welcomed in, and you you want to join the yacht club? Oh, that person can propose you, and then someone's having a party, and and it's very welcoming in that respect. It is a bit of a pity in that respect. If it is dying back, I don't know. I really don't. But yeah.
You've got the international one piece of a legacy, and that, like you said, it's spread to at least one other location. Maybe when some people hear this, they'll try to franchise it further. But what about some other hash traditions? You've done everything, you've seen it all. Red dress runs and charity runs. What do you think of those?
Yeah, I like the red dress run. I wouldn't say they get commercialized. I remember red dress run in Hobart, and we had the mayor of Hobart with his red hat and red dress and his big beard. It looked like a kind of a rugby sort of guy. I remember that. That was good fun. And then we were all wearing red dresses going on into the evening, and we were told that it was still against the law to be cross-dressing in Tasmania after dark or something like that. We had hashes like absolutely full of people wearing red dresses. That's good value. We used to have red dress. It seems to have turned into a kind of a Valentine's Day run. Bit disappointed, right? Because a red dress run turning into Valentine's run does actually, I think, overshadow, gets in the way of the Gisbert Memorial Run on the 11th. And I think that's a bit of a pity, because I'd love to see that a bit more recognised. But obviously running around with a red frock on and people looking at you and whatever, it's more of a thing to sell to people. So I think Gisbert Memorial Run it would be nice to recognise that a little bit more. We used to have in Dar, there was a Paddy head gasket. A guy who died on the hash right in front of the yacht club the year before I arrived. He was a massive hasher. He was a stalwart. We used to have the head gasket memorial run each year at the place outside the yacht club where he dropped dead at the beer stop, type of thing. We'd raise a glass, but then even before I left, people would say, "Who? What?" Because people churn and turn so quickly. What I like about the hash is that each hash has got its own traditions. It's got its own sort of things that you do, and you'll have a run to celebrate this, or you'll have an away weekend to celebrate that, and whatever. And long may it remain that way. Otherwise, it gets too formulaic, too franchised. We said Dar es Salaam used to have a Bagamoyo relay where we'd talk about all Dre dinking. Yeah, all Dre dinking. It would be like a couple of teams, and we'd have this sort of relay where there were different legs, a bit like a rally sort of thing, and there'd be a cycling one and a couple of running ones, and start at 7 a.m. There'd be two people or two or three, one from each team doing the leg, and everyone would be in cars, and we'd have a beer wagon following, and we'd start at about 8 o'clock in the morning, and the entire day would be just fantastic. Bagamoyo relay. But it was unique. Someone had done it one year. It was good fun. It worked well, and there was enough people there to keep that legacy going. Some of the long-termers that knew the rules of the game, type of thing.
Well, you spend a lot of time running, keeping hashes going, organizing, doing all the jobs, running circles. Now, do you miss it? When you go hashing, do you want to be up on the beer crate like they had in Cairo or running a circle, or are you happy to wisecrack and stay back?
I did enough. I did quite a lot of that in Dar, and like you, I've done quite a lot of emceeing, public speaking, and you want someone to talk to. Black tie event of 400 people in Dar or Lusaka, I do it because I'm just not afraid of mouthing off in public, or run the auction or whatever it is. So that kind of came naturally as well. I was very happy for other people to do it, but you've got to have the right person, because it can put a downer on you, spit it up type of thing. I don't miss it, but if I were doing it and someone said I'd do it, it's ingredients of a hash. You've got to have a half decent trail. You've got to have enough cold beer, and you've got to have a good circle. Bread and circuses really is what you're giving people. No cold beer, fuck off. The circle, you've got to do it, and there's elements to it, and it's knowing how to read the crowd, knowing how to read your audience, knowing how not to go on too long. No one ever says the circle went on too long if they were laughing for half an hour. Whereas if it's like shite, after 5 minutes, people are going, lost control, food's ready, who is this dude, type of thing. You've got to be able to read your crowd and do that, and have a few things in your back pocket. You've got some likely suspects somebody's going to drink out of his shoe or do whatever, and call on those as you need. And if you're not in the circle, cut the RA some slack. Give some good back chat, some good banter, some good back calling, because they can bounce off that. They can work it, but cut them some slack because they're doing their best. It's up there. Yeah. But I enjoy it. I enjoy the circle much more than the runs or particularly now as my knees are going.
Yeah, that's not uncommon. There are even some hashers we hashed with over the years who've said, I can't make any more big events, and we've seen them for the last time at some big events. And there's an old farts run at every big event now for people just to stroll around. That's just the way it's going to go with that generation. Yeah.
It is, and I think that I like what Shakespeare's doing. I like the tone of his mag. It's very retrospective. It's a bit of what's happening now. People we all know appearing there, a few bits of sort of, and that's I having people to put the effort in and recognize some of that. And what you're doing is the oral history. You'll be interviewing old people next about what it was like during the Second World War in the Pacific Campaign and whatever. And there's so much hash history which is just being captured now, but just piles of old paper copies of old trashes and mags and t-shirts and all that. Fuck, I've got so many hash t-shirts. Shit, I don't know what to do with them.
You know about the Hash T-shirt museum, right?
I know someone was doing it. Is it in The Hague?
And he's now started a branch in KL. So it's Neptunus. And he has at least 2 depots, and he's thinking, we're talking about maybe putting one in North America just so you don't have to fly everything across the ocean. So
yeah, I've got so many. But how come I've got 722 hash t-shirts and I only ever wear 3 of them? It's like, because they're my favorite. All the ones at the top of the heap. The hash t-shirts I had 20 years ago, I think they've shrunk in storage because they don't really fit me.
Yeah.
They just tight.
Must have been the way they made cotton back then. Yeah.
It was, yeah.
And you're a cotton man.
I used to be a cotton man. I'm now a sugar man. Yeah.
That's what your wife says. Yeah. Anyhow. Yeah.
Sweet as anything. Yeah. It's those memories. I actually find my mugs are what I like most because I can use those, and I've got my. Oh, I should have had it. Do you remember we had the Cairo 100-run mugs that were made by the Monkey Brothers in the Khan Khalili, and Molotov got these going. So I've got mine, and the bits have fallen off, and they got welded on and whatever. And I put it down in Hobart. I put it down, and I turned my back, and I know who it went missing, and that was like when. And then that was like, I think, day 1. And then day 4, I was talking like you do. Oh, hi, I'm Condom Man. Oh, you're Condom Man. We've got your mug. And there was this couple from Newcastle Hash in Australia, Fergie and Tombstone. And they picked up my mug and they was confiscating it and getting back to me. So they couldn't find me. They'd been looking for me all the time with my mug. But when they saw it, they hadn't taken it out. So we swapped details, I don't know, fucking telex addresses or whatever it was in those days. And then I didn't make it to Goa, and they came to Cardiff. And when they came to Cardiff, I remember you were up on stage at Millennium Stadium and you said, "Is Condom Man there because Fergie and Tombstone have got your mug?" And it's like, it was Harry met Sally, and we were like fighting each other across and they had it engraved on loan to Fergie and Tombstone so they had it for 4 years, and I got my mug back, and it's battered. And what's really good with those mugs is if you get a beer cooler, neoprene thing, put it inside, and then a can goes exactly so you can drink your can out of the thing. And I think,
yeah, that's right.
I think if there was a fire, that's me, apart from the family, of course, and the pets, of course. And my bank details, of course. That's what I'd rescue on the way out of the house, because that's shared many a good time. My Cairo Hash 100-run mug. It's dented, and I've got all these other mugs, hash mugs from various places, and they're good memories.
We shared many hash memories together, and we've both been dented a few times, and so that's a good way to reflect on the hash. Anybody else you want to mention? People will be listening to this. Anybody else you want to call out and say, "Oh, here's some hashers"? Otherwise,
oh God, the list. The trouble is, if you call people out, it's the people you don't.
Yeah,
call
then
out.
who'd you skip? Yeah.
No, really, it's done the round. There's some great people in the UK hash scene that I people like you mentioned, Ride and Table Wine, that we broke bread with, we drunk a lot of beer with over that sort of side. In Dar, there's just trying to think. My old mate Cockroach, he's made quite a good recovery thanks to the hash community, and that's really nice. To really pulls my heartstrings a little bit about how people came up trumps for him. Lusaka, there's some good stalwarts left in Lusaka. We've got Batman as a semi-mad, semi-feral artist who does the most fantastic hash t-shirts. I'm just trying to think of the sort of characters along the line. But yeah, and then there's the various Cairo people that we colleagues. Drinking colleagues, running colleagues.
You mentioned Sir Cluggs. Definitely spend a lot of time in the community having parties. The hash
Yeah.
community was big, and Hogmanay's with Sir Cluggs. And
Well, so Cluggs runs with Milton Keynes hash. So every so often our paths will overlap. He's very sensible because he's got a good Foreign Office pension and spends most of his winters in the Philippines or Indonesia or Thailand or somewhere like that. He comes about the new wife. No, don't say no. I remember I used to go into Accra in Ghana when he was based there, when he was still working, and he would meet me at the airport because he had an access all areas pass for Accra airport, and I'd let him know I was coming in, and he'd meet me airside, say, give me a passport, give me your baggage ticket, give them to his fixer man, and say, come through here, and he'd take me to the Starlight bar next to the Accra. We'd have a couple of large bottles of cold beer, and then about 45 minutes to an hour later, Cluggs' driver would appear and he'd say, we've got everything, and he'd take me to the hotel. So our paths had crossed various times. I say I met him in Limassol because he was there with the Cairo folk, and we just underlapped in Cairo, and then in and out of in Ghana and seeing him into hashes that. And then he's a Milton Keynesy person, so he's been around the block a few times. But I tell you what, if Cluggs has told you a story once, he's told you the same story 50 fucking times. I tell you that though. I don't know if he does it just to get the details right or whatever, but especially, bro, there's nothing new about
I haven't managed to track him down for an interview, but I'll see if I can get him to tell, at least in the course of an hour, at least 2 different stories.
I'll send you the detail. I'll send you his email details or his WhatsApp details. The thing about hashing is, like I said earlier, you get these people and that sort of hashing just changes their life. It completely transforms their outlook on life, and some people are just absolutely born hashers and they get transformed by it, sort of thing.
There's one thing that happened in the 80s and the 90s I noticed, not just in Cairo, but there. And even people that came to Cairo from another hash, they would find the hash for the first time, and they're at the right age, between 25 and 35, and life's great, and the hash is fantastic. And then they move, and they say, "Oh, it's not the same."
It's like your first love, your first hash. But this is where I take issue with people. When people arrive and go, oh, and we used to do it like this, or we used to do it like that, or we sing this song. It is what it is. There's a common theme that goes through it, but it's got its own identity. And yeah, you can nudge it, but don't come in and say, oh, you should be doing it differently. Come in and join in and then introduce a new tradition. And if it really doesn't work for you, then set your own one up or leave or whatever. You've got to be prepared to respect what the tradition of that hash has grown up in. Yeah. And I remember in Cairo, the GM did fuck all. It was the hair raiser that stood up and did all the announcements and that, and then handed over to the RA. Lusaka, there wasn't a GM, it was an HM, and the HM and the RA used to do a double act. They used to run the circle to the end, bouncing off each other, and it worked really well. If you had the right combination there, then it worked really well. So it was like, it's what works there. If you don't like it, off you go. Go do something else. But
that's like this podcast. Yeah. We'll see what kind of feedback you get. Yeah, it's great. Your personality came through. Your story came through. Your summation of what hashing was will resonate with a lot of people.
I'm just going to go back and listen to what other people are saying on that sort of thing.
There was a color you were not allowed to wear on Cairo hash.
Pink, because that was the hair T-shirt.
Yeah.
And you would only hair once, maybe twice a year on Cairo, because there was enough people. And you had the hair T-shirt, it had the Stella, it said hair restorer on the back of it. And then we also, because it was big enough, we had our Wanker of the Week T-shirt, remember? Yeah. Which was like the equivalent. And that's another nice hash tradition. It's hash shit, Wanker of the Week, Prick of the Week, whatever. And then you've got you remember the yellow gala beer in Cairo, which you got for that, which you brought over for when we had our hash wedding the day after our civilian wedding. And I had to wear that and look, if you like, the city hash pink tutu that they brought up for that. And it's those little traditions I was talking about earlier. That's what really makes the character of an individual hash. And the yellow gala beer, if you got it, you had to add something to it. You had to write something on it or sew something on it or or I don't know, you had to enhance it just that little bit extra, and then somebody lost it, and then you just start again. It was
Yeah. The yellow Galileo we had through those times was not yellow.
yes.
It had
Yeah.
been replaced by a stripy thing. It's good. It was good talking to you.
Are you going to be through London at all?
No, we're going through New Zealand for Interhash in March, and really not leaving the continent till we're going to German Nash Hash, so we might go through. We might come through on the way.
Cool. They don't grow much sugarcane in Canada, so I doubt I'll be through.
Yeah, you won't miss anything. Except, boy, Toronto, I think, is the city, as far as I can tell, that has benefited the most and uniformly by climate change. I have a big sidewalk that the city owns that I have to shovel. I went through 1 bag of salt last year instead of 10. The El Nino's coming, and we're not supposed to have hardly any snow this winter. All those wildfires seem to go around Toronto and just cloud up America. We just have the greatest weather in the last 5 years that we've ever had. It's bizarre.
So just the rest of the planet suffering. You're okay.
Everybody else. Buffalo had 6 feet of snow last winter, but Toronto is, bring it on, climate change. It's like somebody put a bubble around Toronto. So yeah, it's a really pleasant place to live now. When the planet crashes, we'll all be sunk. But yeah, it's been
we'll go to New Zealand when the planet crashes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll talk to you later. On.
To close the circle, here's the Hash Anthem sung by Mother Hash.
Swing low, sweet child.